Happy Saturday, Preston. I haven't made a video in a couple days, and that's because this week has been very, very strange for a lot of various reasons, and I just did not have time the other day to make a video. Obviously, the election was on Tuesday evening. We now have a new president, President Barack Obama, who was our president before. So he's new, but he's old. I was honestly getting kind of worried at the beginning of this whole election because um, I wasn't really all for Romney, but it wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world if he had been elected. It's just always the lesser of two evils, and that's how it always will be until we switch voting systems. But that is another video. In my sociology class, we did some research when the campaigning was all first starting, and my group concluded that based off of the evidence of each state's current polling, which was back then current, not now current, but based on their polling, Obama was going to win, no problem. And despite whatever worries I had, I think that held true no matter what. I don't know if you heard about it. I'm sure you have, but you never know. There was a hurricane on the East Coast, Hurricane Sandy, that totally disrupted this election. Like, there were some states where just, you didn't really know how they were going to vote because not everybody was able to, because either they didn't have access to internet or, the power was out, or a whole myriad of reasons. But one of the biggest states to be affected by this was Florida. Now, Florida is a hard state to get all of the voting done in anyways because they have upwards of like 9 million voters. So getting them all in on one day is a huge task, which they actually didn't even finish on election day. Florida has, I think, 29 electoral votes. So if you're running for president and you really want to win, Florida is one of the states you need to hit hard with everything you got, because 29 electoral votes is a lot of electoral votes for anybody. On election night, Florida hadn't managed to cast all their votes yet. And it was kind of like a weird version of sports watching the elections, because Florida was at like 1% of all of their tallied votes, and Obama and Romney were tied from the get-go. I mean, every time the percentage would go up of all the votes that had been tallied, there was maybe a maximum of 1,200 votes separating the two of them. And it wasn't just when they were at 1 and 2%, but it was even later while they were at like 92, 93%. I think recently, like maybe in the last day or so, all the votes have actually been counted. It took like 4 days for all of the votes to get counted, which is just unbelievable. It didn't affect this election too terribly because Obama won even without Florida. I mean, if Romney had gotten Florida, nothing would have changed except for Romney would have had more votes than he did. But he wouldn't have had even close to the 270 he needed. But frankly, I'm just surprised that the hurricane didn't affect the election more, because, I mean, it hit New York, a ton of electoral votes. It hit all the small states right up at the top of the northeastern part of the United States. I'm so bad at directions! I mean, all of them have small numbers of electoral votes, but put them all together, and that's quite a hefty stack of votes. And also, Ohio is another one of those states that you just had to watch, because there has not been, I think it's just Republican president. It may be both parties, but at the very least, there has not been a Republican president yet that's been elected that has not won Ohio. And I mean, Ohio has a decent number of electoral votes. They've got 18, I think, which, isn't quite as hefty as Florida's 29, which is definitely not even close to the number California has, which is like 50-something. There was a funny picture I saw earlier yesterday or so, and it was a picture of Karl Roves. And if you don't know who Karl Roves is, he's the guy who pretty much ran the entire George W. Bush political campaign. He made George Bush president, essentially. Like, he knows how to make you get elected if he's running your campaign. But it was a picture that was talking about a speech he gave recently. In essence, he said, if it wasn't for Hurricane Sandy throwing off Mitt Romney's momentum, Mitt Romney would have won. And then the picture kind of goes on to say, oh, so you're saying God wanted Obama to win. Divine intervention. It can be kind of funny sometimes, especially if you're Karl Roves. But enough about politics. Time to talk a little bit about my personal life. So for those of you who know him, which might not be a lot of you, but I've got a buddy. His name is Jackson Haymaker, and he has been in basic training in Georgia for months now. I think like 6 or 7, maybe even 8 months. He's been gone a long time. Well, he just came home today after finishing all of his training. He's home now for a week or so, and then he is shipping off to Germany for 2 long years, which I know is not exactly where he wants to be, but at least he'll be safe, which I also know is not necessarily what he wants, but yeah. Welcome home is what I'm really trying to say. If you know Jackson, please make a point of trying to get to see him over the next week and a half or so. I know he was really happy to see some of the people he had not seen in a very long time. So for all you guys who have people going into the Army or the Navy or the Marines or, you know, whatever else there is, just let them know you care. Let them know you're thinking about them, especially with Veterans Day coming up. If you've had relatives that have been in the Army, military, what have you, Air Force, why not? Just make sure you let them know that you respect them for what they're doing and that you really appreciate all the sacrifices that they've made so that we can stay safe in this country and be able to keep the freedom that we've worked so hard to get. Preston, I'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget to be awesome. Hey, you guys want to go play some whiskey? That's probably funnier to me than it is to you.